Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our backyard. I can't believe it is already the end of June garden tour. Time flies. And you're going to see an unvarnished garden tour today. All my garden tours are unvarnished. You see it like it is. And we have been in, golly, it's over 10 days now of this heat and humidity, which is fairly unusual in June. And it's in the hundreds temperature-wise, but it's also high humidity. As I'm taping it this morning, it is 95% humidity here, and it is before 7 o'clock. Whew, it is hot. So I like to give a pan of my gardens. You don't get to see down either side, but this is my view when I look out into my garden from my patio. And I really like the different views depending on what direction that I'm looking. And even though this isn't in my garden, I'm gonna point out the beautiful sunflowers over here in the neighbor's garden behind me. These sunflowers are in my neighbor's garden, and they're so cheery. She planted one sunflower last year, and it grew really tall, and I think this year she's decided to plant obviously quite a few more. And of course the pollinators love these. And she has them planted in planters and has them propped up higher, whether they're on chairs, some are on benches. So that's why they tower so high over the fence. You've got to be like 12 feet tall. Love the cheeriness. Today I'm going to start in my shade bed. And this is probably one of the areas in my garden that I like the most. And I think it's purely for the color. I'm going to link up top a video that I did at the beginning, early this spring, planting this shade garden. But what I have found is Coleus and Caladiums do so wonderful in the heat and humidity down here. And I've got this beautiful colored Coleus called Ruby Slipper with the contrasting chartreuse color of Big Blonde that really pops in the garden. And then I've got a darker green in the back of my salvia. And then tucked in, I have amber colored Coleus. I think the combination is just gorgeous. So between the colors of my Salvia madrensis, that beautiful color green and large leaf, and my proven winners, Coleus, Sedona Sunset, and then Big Blonde and Ruby Slipper, I just think that pops throughout the garden bed. Love it here. I have other Coleus that I have named in prior, and I don't recall all the names of the Caladiums and the Coleus, but I have found that I do like to collect them in this garden bed just because of the look. The other thing I want to point out is I have this ground cover that has been eaten to the ground now from my caterpillars 2 times this spring, actually 2 times since March. And this is the white vein Dutchman's pipe that my pipevine swallowtails love to lay their eggs on. And this is what their caterpillars look like. And they grow into gorgeous black with iridescent blue on the bottom half of their wings. And they're just gorgeous. And they eat pipevine. And my pipevine, I have two different types. And my pipevine here I have growing up into my red tip tree. Love these butterflies. So in my shade garden, I also take advantage of different types of Coleus. The one back here is a Proven Winners Coleus, and I just love the color of it. And it is from the Heart to Heart series called Splash of Wine. But I think this bed, and it's a shade bed, I think it just pops with color. I love the different textures. I love the different colors. I do have the two different colored sweet potato vines that are winding throughout here that I think just really adds that pop of color. I like the low chartreuse and the layered look. I just think that works. And then I kind of end it down here with the shrimp plants. And these things, as I have mentioned, have been flowering wonderfully since the end of February. These have been such a wonderful add to my garden. I've never had shrimp plant before, and I am so happy that I've included them this year. One of the things that you have found in my backyard gardens, if you have watched a couple of my videos, is you know that I like to garden vertically. And one of the ways that I do this is I hang planters from trees. I've got a couple of Swedish ivies here that I really, really like. I'm going to get a little closer to the smaller one. They have such delicate little flowers that the pollinators love to visit. I wouldn't think that this tiny little flower would be so captivating, but yet it is. And I really like the dark color of this foliage. So anyway, I do like to garden vertically, and you'll see I do have hanging baskets throughout, but I also have plants trellised. This is my patio area, and as you know, I garden for butterflies and hummingbirds and birds, but I do have a couple of outdoor enclosures here, and one of them housed monarch butterflies, and we've released 108 monarchs. We don't have any now because they have been traveling and are going up north, and so we don't have any right now, but that will change once we see them start migrating again through the fall, except for the ones that are here year-round. We do have a few that we see that are here year-round. And then I also protect the eastern black swallowtail because, of course, everything loves to eat those, from my birds to the wasps to, it seems like you name it, those poor things are tasty morsels. So that's what these two outdoor enclosures are for. And then I have bird feeding stations. I do have 3, and then I have a couple of bird baths. But the plants here, I have a Kufia that's not getting enough sun, so you can see the foliage and the blooming is pretty sparse. This happens to be, believe it or not, a David Verity, which I have over here that is just flowering prolifically, and it does get full sun. But I have a beautiful azalea I have an aloe vera plant. I have my 3 hibiscus that flower so wonderfully. Then I have a couple of planters. And I do love my planters. They're pretty much just for me to look at and to enjoy. I've got in the centers rock and fuchsia, mystic spires, salvia. Along this edge is a Supertunia called Paradise. This is a Tithonia that's fairly new. It's kind of gone through its bloom cycle, but it will bloom here again. This is another hummingbird magnet. I did have Bidens and lobelia in here, but they were at their end because it's just too hot now. All right, as I turn, one of the planters that I am so pleased with is this is the newest planter that I have planted, and it has this Superbina sparkling amethyst. And last night we had 2. I couldn't believe it. Both my husband and I were just shocked. 2 hummingbird moths. And I've noticed the swallowtails like this Superbina, but oh my goodness, those hummingbird moths were all over our garden, but they just loved this particular plant. Love this flower. And I showed this in my salvia tour. This is a new salvia that I have, a salvia grigii, and then a celosia. And then coming down this way, I have a coral porterweed. Porterweed is such a beautiful nectar plant, wonderful nectar plant. Some Turk's cap. And then on the corner, I have my coral honeysuckle and some beautiful pink pentas that are just flowering beautifully. Okay, I'm going to turn and pivot here and now come down the other side of our fence. The sun is just starting to come over. So as I continue down my fence area, I have these 2 vertical plants, both a red mandevilla and my, why can't I think of the name? Mexican flame bush. And this one has gone through 2 complete flowerings. I left this here so you can see. I've deadheaded everything on it except this. And they have beautiful orange flowers, but it is at the end of its 2nd flush of blooms. And what I have noticed so far, so we'll see if this holds true, what I have noticed is it takes about a month to get another complete flush of blooms. And at least here where I'm at in zone 9A along the Texas Gulf Coast. And so I'll see if that holds throughout the summer. Okay. As I continue down and look at the trellises, I am just stunned with how our cardinal climber has been flowering for a month and a half. And of course, our hummingbird that we have a female here. She just loves it, and the birds, she loves it. The bees love it. Our large butterflies love the flowers. But what I'm hoping it isn't is I'm hoping it isn't sacrificing all the foliage that it creates. So I'm going to have to see. I don't know why this year is any different or any weirder, but it is. And my Russellia, which is called also firecracker plant, my hummingbird just loves. I don't find it to be the most beautiful plant, but it flowers so consistently that I'll probably always have at least one Roselia in the yard. And then of course on down to my Vermillionaire Kufia, which is just a performer and a continued performer. It flowers so well. And now I'm going to look down what we call our trellis bed. And from May to June, now in this garden tour, it certainly has gotten lush. My passion vine has been growing beautifully, which is the host plant. Oh, yeah. I do have some flowers up here. Lots of bugs. Do have flowers that have just started blooming. And then of course my Flamacanthus, which is my native bush or shrub that I just love. And as I come down, I do have a butterfly bush. And I have this in a pot, and I have my passion vine. It is a hybrid called Incense, and I do have that in a pot. And I do have it staked with bamboo shoots, and I'm going to come around the back here. And I do have a large pole, and that goes all the way up to give support and structure. Kind of show the back end of, or the back side has growth along with the front side. So I'm going to go back around the front. Last year I had lantana between each one of my Flamacanthus, and those competed, and they pretty much just overgrew. And so I made the brilliant decision of putting Mexican sunflower in here. And it is also competing. I hate to pull it out though, because it is such a pollinator magnet. There are pollinators on this all the time. When I come out and tape though, I don't have it's so early that the only things that are usually out are the bees. The butterflies usually aren't flowering. And the reason I come out so early is because of the lighting. It's so much better lighting than the bright sun. But I do love this plant. And my husband and I have talked about a way that we can incorporate this, not in this location, but creating a future bed for purely Tithonia and annuals. This is an annual that I planted from seed. And I'm going to come through here. And I do have a few zinnias here and there. Those were self-seeded. Interesting how orange came up. I don't think I had any orange last year. It was yellow and bright colors. Go figure. But I love this bed. I'm going to come around to the back side. So the passion flower, as I mentioned, is a host plant. This passion flower vine to the Gulf fritillary. And if you are a butterfly gardener, you know that having host plants is the key to attracting many different types of butterflies to your garden. And I have 4 different types of passion flower, a couple in pots, actually 3 in pots, Most are planted, actually 4 because on the other end, but most are planted in ground. And this will become just a beautiful carpet. Guess you don't have carpets high, but just beautiful, maybe draperies is the best way to say it. Right now I've got Tithonia peeking out here and there. Okay. And then as I look in the corner of my garden, you can see the sun is coming out. I have what we call the 4x4 garden, and then my tree bed. In my tree bed, I have salvia, which I just did a video on. So I'm not going to go through all the salvia, but salvia is one of those mainstays in my garden that I just will always have multiple varieties of salvia. And then I've talked about porterweed. And my porterweed, this one is a red porterweed. And it is flowering just not as prolifically as it has been. It certainly has flowers all over it, but thank goodness that I have so many other plants flowering in the garden, because now porterweed is supplemental instead of the primary source of nectar. And in my 4x4 bed, I have pentas and cherry coneflower that I love. Talked about my John Fanick phlox. For those of you that are interested, oh my goodness, we had a horrible thunderstorm here, high winds, and it knocked my John Fanick phlox down. So these two weren't as tall, but these two were, and I had to come and put some bamboo stakes to help them stay up. I was so disappointed to see that that high wind had knocked my couple of the stalks of my John Fanick phlox down. So that's something to be wary of if you're in a high windy area. You might need some support. And the other thing that's really interesting is my blue chiffon. It has been struggling. This is my Rose of Sharon. And I had mentioned when I planted this, I actually purchased it from Proven Winners. And it couldn't have come as a smaller plant. I think it was about that big. I couldn't believe they sent such a small plant through the mail. But this is its 3rd season, and it's usually flowering by now, and it is not enjoying its life. There was a lot of rain, and I think that's what caused some of this leaf curling on the ends. Anyway, he's not too pleased with his life. So I am gonna look and come around and take a look at this tree bed. And I'm gonna come around. This is the salvia. I'm gonna come around to the lantana. And I have red and yellow lantana, Liatris, that has spent and is done blooming. Come around to the new Greg's Mist flower that I have, that is such a butterfly magnet. Interesting little flower. And I come around to the lantana all throughout here. That is rose or rosé, and that's a beautiful, vibrant colored rose and peachy, yellowy color. And then of course this is the other David variety, Kufia, and it gets full sun and it flowers gorgeously. And it loves its life in the full sun. So as I look down, I've got a tiny little corner now that is in sun, but I am going to go down there and talk about the plants. So I'm going into that corner. I have mentioned this is an area that I do have issues with drainage. And so this year I am trying pots. And you might think, why light colored pots? Well, the reason they are light colored is because it gets so hot back here and it bakes so much that I do want that light reflected back so the roots don't boil. I mean, it is just intensely hot back here from the brick, and it's like a sauna. And so the plants in ground did not do that well in this corner because of the drainage issue, but they are doing okay in the pots. So I am going to, even though it's sunny and I don't really like the lighting back here, I do have butterfly bushes, a Kufia. I do have a little Joe Pye weed that's starting to come on. A lantana. Supertunia Vista bubblegum is not liking the 110 plus heat index and humidity. It's flowering, but it's like, I don't know if I like this too much. I can't wait until this plant starts to flower. This is a Mexican bird of paradise, and I'll be excited to show you. It really has a beautiful, beautiful showy bloom. And I've also mentioned to you about, oops, I want to get a little bit closer here. My giant milkweed. These plants we have for our caterpillars, our monarch caterpillars. And we've not had any issues with the disease OE. And we utilize in our enclosures this giant milkweed. We've been very, very pleased. So you can see I have quite a bit of it, but we've had quite a few, quite a few monarch butterflies. Okay, I'm going to go in the back. Sorry for the lighting in this sun. I know it's much more glare. This is the blue porterweed that I have, and I haven't really shown that one this much. The flowers are definitely more delicate. They're smaller. Certainly still a pollinator magnet. All right, so back in here is my firebush. And then of course you can see some Tithonia that's growing tall. But I've got 3 firebush back here that love the heat and the sun and the humidity. I've mentioned the coral honeysuckle in videos. I think it's important to see how well that it does in this brutal onslaught of what we're experiencing in the summer. And we have that trellised. We have coral honeysuckle both in pots and then in the ground. This is the north bed, and it was the very first garden bed that we installed. One of the things that I have is my coneflowers were delayed this year, which was interesting. Last year they were early. This year they're very delayed for down here. And as you can see, I have a very large stand of fennel. And this is the reason why for the black swallowtail caterpillars. We certainly protect them. I don't protect them all. They are on the food chain, and birds love to eat these guys. I have more than enough fennel to support tons of butterflies, and I have the females in here laying eggs almost daily. So this garden bed has a lot of host plants and a lot of nectar plants, has a lot of salvia. And then on the end, in particular, I have in a pot one of my senna bushes. And this garden bed pretty much is in full sun. And the reason I like this bush is in the summer it has such wonderful yellow blooms. And it is the host plant to the yellow butterflies that you see, the little yellow and the sulfurs. Okay. We mowed, but I have not edged, and you can tell around the back that needs some edging. Ooh, that's messy. But this is where we also have planted cardinal climber to grow up in a design along our fence. So during hummingbird migration, we have this fence also in total blooms. Right now it's blooming, but I wish it would put all its growth, all its concentration into growth rather than trying to bloom. And I do have videos on why we did this. This is just border edging to protect the vines. And then we train them to grow up fishing line. And that's purely for hummingbird migration. Back here on the north side of my garden, I never take you, and it's because it is a working area, also my messy area. But this is typically where I bring plants, one of the areas that I bring them in the shade when I'm getting them started. I tell you, this handy dandy cart that we bought at Home Depot, this Gorilla cart, is a lifesaver in the garden. It's so wonderful with the large wheels. We can take it, fill it up. I think it's rated for 1,200 pounds and just take it through the garden. But one of the things that we do, some of you have asked, is we get in-ground soil. I don't know if this is new. I've never seen this before from Miracle Grow. We got this at Lowe's, and this has compost, aged compost already in it. But we combine that with our mulch. And so when I deadhead, when we mow, we will come and we mulch. Now, we purchased this hoping that this above ground mulcher would do great, and it doesn't do great. So I don't know if I would recommend something like this. But we are also mulching, trying our hand mulching this way. We've got our brown waste, our brown leaves, if you will, in there. And what we do is we combine the two. So we combine that soil and put some of our compost in it, and we combine it in large planters that I haven't utilized yet. And that's what we use as our mulch or top dressing in our raised flower beds. So thank you for joining me on the June garden tour. Whew. It is, I don't mean to complain, but when it's 95% humidity, can you imagine how sweaty I am at the moment? Whew. But seriously, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed taking this tour as much as I enjoyed going through and looking at how lush the garden is. I hope you all have a wonderful day today.